Father God, we thank you so much for this time. We lift it up to you. Lord, we thank you for all of our relationships. Thank you for our families. Thank you for our spouses. Thank you for just all the people in our lives. And Father, help us to just to appreciate them, to speak encouraging, positive, meaningful words to them. Lord, help us take this time just to hear you and to hear clearly from you. In the name of Jesus. Amen. What we're going to look at today is healthy relationships. And we've been giving out books, or I'm supposed to be. Last week you didn't know it, but I think Joey and Allie got a copy of the books. We've got a couple new people in here. Is anybody in here not married? Okay, engaged, talking about it, just dating, just here, just to spend a Sunday morning somewhere. Okay, so we're not going to put you on the spot.
I can just shout it out.
This is recorded and there is a microphone.
There's evidence, yes.
Can be used against you.
He's a lawyer, so he kind of knows, yes. Okay, well, we've got another set of books, and the books I'm giving away, these are books that I really think highly of. Not everything in it is totally accurate, but one of the things I like about it is it's actually two books together. It's called For Men Only, For Women Only. It's by Shanti Feldhahn. She's not even a therapist, but she goes to she shows up a lot at counseling conferences. She's a researcher, and what she did was she studied men and women individually, looking at when women do this or say this or think this, and what does it really mean. You know, and then the same thing for men. So obviously, one's called for men only, and it's for men about women, and then the other one is called for women only, and it's for women about men, because we're so different in a lot of ways. But one of the reasons I like these books, hopefully, because it starts conversation. Because sometimes when we don't talk about what we're thinking and what we're feeling and what's going on, we kind of fill in the blanks all by ourselves, and we fill them in wrong. You know, when I start thinking my wife does something according to what a man would do, it doesn't really fit. She's not a man, thank God. You know, and and so we've been giving these books away. This is the only book I sell on my account, well, other than my book, but I won't push that.
It's really good book.
And but this is the only book I sell on my counseling center because I believe in it so much. And what I do is I just buy used copies of it and sell them. We make no money off of it. So I need to give this copy away today. Let's do it this way. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot. Who hasn't been on a date with your spouse in the past month? Okay.
Raise your hand, too, Kevin.
One didn't. Okay, who hasn't been on a date with your spouse like in the past 3 months? One against the... Okay. Not to put you on the spot, yeah. Hey, we're talking about healthy relationships. First we're looking at today is actually this passage in Proverbs chapter 4. If you got your Bibles, you can read along. Starting in verse 20. This is Proverbs chapter 4. It says, "My son, pay attention to what I say. Turn your ear to my words. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart. For they are life to those who find them, and health to one's whole body. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." Guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. In the NIV, like the old NIV version, I think actually what it says is, guard your heart because it is the wellspring of life. In Holman's version, it says, guard your heart because it is the source of life. Some versions say something along the lines of guard your heart because everything comes out of it. And that's what we want to talk about today. How do we guard this? How do we have these good, healthy boundaries? Not even just in marriage, but outside of marriage, because what we do outside of marriage affects what happens here within marriage. And so the analogy we're going to use today is looking at the relationships that we've got going on. And see, I have to put these in a certain order. Hopefully. Because being married, the person who should be most important to me would be who? My wife, hopefully, yeah. And as we talk about this, we talk about guarding your heart. What's implied here is what? You. You guard your heart. Not everybody guards your heart for you, but that's kind of what's written in there. He's saying, take heed to my words, hold them close to your heart, because it affects your life. Guard your heart, because out of it comes everything. And so, whose responsibility is it to guard my heart? It's mine. And I've got to know who the real source of life is. I've got to know where my life comes from. And so looking at it, if this were my heart, and some of this I'm stealing directly from Ted Cunningham, okay? He's a pastor out of Branson, Missouri, and he even says, take this home and do it all the time with your kids. You know, teach it to them. He says, go off and do it. And so some of it I'm just stealing. He's a whole lot funnier than me. He's like on this Christian comedy tour, but he's also a pastor. His church actually has like about 13 steeples because they bought out this abandoned amusement park. So his church meets like in this castle, you know. So yeah, when your kids love to that, pull up every day, and there's like this roller coaster. It's not running, but it's still there. 'Cause I was there last year, and but a great pastor, but he talks a lot about how do we do this. And so what he calls this is in a sense his love jug, or if you're used to 5 love language terms, we call it what? The love tank. And whose love tank is this? Well, it's mine. And who's responsible for it? Me. And sometimes we make other people responsible for it, don't we? You have to make me happy. You know, and nothing against the movies, you know, but, you know, I don't even know when the movie came out, but Jerry Maguire came out, and it was this big line, which was what? You complete me. You have to complete me. And nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you're romantic, it sounds romantic. It was just right moment there. You know, I'm not going to say great movie. Don't go watch it. Because don't go watch it. You know, but there's something about it when I start saying somebody else has to fill this up. This is mine. It's my heart. I have to guard my heart in all of my relationships, and I'm the one responsible for it. So I've got to figure out who am I going to pour into. And you can tell which glass is kind of shapely up here, and my wife has to be the first one I pour into. And pouring into her, you know, it's not always easy. And that was my wife, in just case you You know, and not easy, not just because of her, but because of me. Can I figure out this has to be? And sometimes it's not, you know what I mean? We're going to have seasons of life where something else gets in the way, where crisis happens. We can't always do it. You know, part of what happens sometimes for some couples is kids come along and the spouse kind of moves further down the line, you know, or work comes along, or hobbies come along, and it stays. And when it's that way, it's harder to fill up. Can I figure out, this is my love tank, this is my love jug. I'm the one responsible for it. And am I going to pour it into her? And this is where I've got to figure out, how do I fill this up? Who is my real source of life? Because if I don't know how to get it filled up, I'm going to be looking for everybody in my life to fill it up. I've got to know. This is why it says in Proverbs, guard your heart. And when Solomon says, you know, listen to my words, take heed of it, it's because he knows the real source of life. Can I figure out how to come to him? And I don't just mean like pray a little bit more, just be more spiritual and it fixes everything. It's not that. Can I really come to him in a meaningful way? And this is a lot of what John has been talking about Sunday mornings. Because it's not, did you figure out the magic words to say now you're saved, and you just said, you know, the right combination of words. It's, do you believe? Do I know how to fill it? We were married for 13 years. And part of that was choice, part of it was situations coming up, circumstances. We were married for 13 years before we had kids. But somewhere along the way, Isabella came in, and she's the little pink one, you can tell, you know? And man, she came along and she was a baby, you know, kind of typical baby, but easy to pour into, you know? And she loved learning, she loved talking, we could pour into her, and she did really well, you know, and we love that. And about 4 years later, here comes this other, you know, little one. He's kind of stocky, and if you know Jay, this is him. You know? He's a handful, you know. And I don't say that in a mean way. It's just, but we fill into them in different ways. With my daughter, we know how to fill into her is spending time. If she and I go for a walk, she just starts talking. It comes out. If we get in the car and go somewhere, she just starts talking. You know, that's her. She likes that quality time. When she wants something, you know. If she wants more attention, it's, hey, can, you know, she'll come to her mom. Can you come, you know, just lay down with me while I'm going to sleep or something. Come talk to me. It's that quality time. He's very different. To pour into him, it's not the talking. He hears me. He doesn't really hear it. It's the playing. He's rough. He wants to get out there, and just play rough. That's him. That's how we pour into him. It's very different. But he gets it differently, And because of that, we have to come up with different ways to do it. And he's definitely one. She was very easy. You know what I mean? She's got stuff she wanted to learn. She wanted to do this. She was talking very fast. She was walking very fast. Him, he's at his own pace. He doesn't care what anybody else is doing, And so we have to pour into him differently. And we have other people in our lives, and I don't know who's in your life, but you've got other relationships, and it might be parents, that we kind of pour it into. And they're meaningful. And we may have some other people that may even be family that we just kind of pour into. We think, might be Uncle Al who just drains it all out of you anyway, so you kind of hold back, and we're not sure we want, and we kind of do it a little bit because we're not really sure where it's going to go. And then we have these other relationships where we go to work and we've got to pour into other stuff, And we may even have relationships at work where it's just like, man, people just, it's sloppy, it's messy, it's coming out. And then, if we're really looking for it, we don't know how to get this full on a consistent basis. We're looking for who to pour back into us. Everybody else. And we want them to. And hopefully they do. And hopefully my wife kind of pours back into me. And just like we talked about a couple weeks ago, there's no guarantee that she will. It's just a whole lot more likely the more I pour into her. But if all it becomes is I pour into you because you pour into me and I pour, we have words for that. And some of those words would be what? Dysfunction. Do what?
It's a transaction.
It's a transaction, yeah. But all of it is I give you so you give back to me, but then you give me so I give back to you. We kind of call it enmeshment or codependency. Codependency is me expecting everybody else to fill this out. This is one of the reasons why when Paul's writing about marriage and he says, not to be unequally yoked. Because if you're with somebody who doesn't know how to fill up their jug, they're looking for who to fill up? You. And if you're unequally yoked, we know that imagery of the yoke, it's not the egg yolk, it's the cattle or oxen, out in the field. And if you've got them, two oxen yoked together, and one of them is stronger, one of them is weaker, which one's going to control it? Which one's going to push it, drive it? The one that's stronger. And it's always going to veer off to their direction. And yet when it's equally yoked, it goes straight because they're both pulling in, they're both giving in, they're both putting their heart. And this is one of the reasons why he says don't be. Because if you're with someone who doesn't know the source of life, they're looking for it to come from other places. It doesn't even mean like bad, evil, awful places. It may be work, it may be kids. But the problem is when we start getting some of that filled by our kids, or most of it filled by our kids, and this spouse moves further and further down the line, they get drained more and more too because they're pouring in. They've got other relationships. Can I figure out how to do this? And I heard this just the other day. I heard this great example of being unequally yoked. It was this young girl, probably early 20s, who had been, earlier in life, had been in a long-term relationship, even in high school, dating the same guy, really, really serious. She was a Christian, she would have said, and went off on a mission trip. She would have said she was a Christian, but at the time, now she would say, didn't really know what it meant to give her life, or have Jesus come into her life. And went off on this mission trip. And the whole time she's there, she's sneaking away, making phone calls. And somebody who was leading the trip just kind of caught her. Said, wait a minute, you're here to give. It's not about that. And so she started opening up about this relationship. Not even that it was like, abusive or anything like that, but he wasn't saved. She's wondering where she's at in her faith. And the person who was leading this mission trip, incredible example, said, climb up on this table. And you pull me up. And so the girl climbs up on the table and tries to pull up this lady who's leading the trip. And she's just dead weight. She's not going anywhere. And she says, jump down. And then she gets up on the table. And she said, now you pulled me off. And how much easier that is. But that's that unequally yoked. Is being in a relationship with somebody who doesn't know. And it doesn't mean it's always going to be perfect and easy. I've got to figure out, how do I put into people in my life? How do I know, even with people who are hard to pour into sometimes, how do I do that? Because if I let them determine where the boundaries are, they may not draw the lines the same way I do. So I've got to figure out, how do I do this? How do I pour into me, but how do I get me through? And again, I don't just mean like, can you pray just a little bit more, just, have a little bit more faith. And when you're reading in Jude chapter 1, verse 20, it says, being responsible. I'm sorry, or actually it says, building yourself up in the most holy faith and staying in prayer with the Holy Spirit, or in the Holy Spirit, so that you stay in the love of God. And that's ours. This is mine. And when I'm looking for everybody else to fill me up, and that doesn't mean like I have to be so isolated and insulated that, that nobody fills me up and I'm just, just an island to myself. That doesn't work either. How do I be a part of it? So one of the things we're going to look at this morning is I'm going to share with you some four guidelines, 4 principles for maintaining healthy boundaries. Okay? And pass these out. Oops. And looking at these principles, sorry about this. If y'all want some pens, you can pass these around too. Looking at these principles, in one sense, we're talking about what are healthy boundaries. How do I define what I am? When you hear the word boundaries, what words come to your mind, or what imageries? What does boundaries mean? Any words? When you hear the word boundaries, what comes to your mind?
Fences, physical.
You what?
Fences or physical boundaries.
Fences or physical boundaries. Yeah. Any other words?
Rules.
Rules. Yeah. Anything else? And that's kind of what it is. It's physical boundaries in a sense. Fences. Boundaries define who I am and define who I'm not. And there are a lot of therapists, especially 20th century therapists, who think they, invented stuff, and you look in scripture and it's like, man, it was there all along, But there's a therapist back in the 50s or 60s named Bowen, and he took some of this, he took some of the language of boundaries and applied it to people. And he used a different word for it. He actually used the word differentiation. If you ever heard that. Any biology teachers in here? No? Okay, good. It doesn't really look like this, but we'll act like that just to make sure I didn't do it before I start off this way. But he actually took this concept of boundaries or differentiation, and he got it out of biology. This idea of cell differentiation. And it doesn't really look like this, but in a sense, it's kind of like if you have this cluster of cells. And this cluster of cells has these individual cells within it. And it doesn't really look like this, but we'll act like it does. And differentiation doesn't just mean different. It has 2 meanings. One of the meanings is how they all work together to form a cluster. Meaning they're a group. And the second meaning is that not only are they a group, but they're individuals. And so this therapist, who did a lot with family systems and boundaries and differentiation, he said, what if we take this concept out of biology and not talk about cell differentiation, but talk about people, groups, co-workers, teams? How do we talk about self-differentiation? How do I set up these healthy boundaries? How do I figure out how to be a part of this group, but then also not lose my identity? Where we all have the same last name, but we have different roles. We're all in the band together, but you can't have like 5 bass players. Well, you can, but it gets kind of boring after a while. After about 3 songs, if you're not a musician, it doesn't make sense. But everybody does something different in a band. Everybody does something different on a team. Everybody can't be the quarterback. You know, you can't have 11 quarterbacks and no one gets the ball. You know, it doesn't work. How do I be a part of this family or team? And how do I set up these boundaries? How do I figure out what's me and who do I pour it into? And so some of the things we're going to look at is just 4 things really quick. The first one is this. How do I set these boundaries up? The first one is this. It's, oops. And this is on your sheet. Be responsible for self. And I wrote the notes down so you wouldn't have to, you know, so you can kind of follow along pretty easily. But this is it, being responsible for me. Whose love tank is this? Whose love is mine? Can I be responsible for me? When it's not me being responsible, it's me looking at everybody else to kind of just pour back into me, and maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, maybe they hit, but maybe they don't, maybe it's kind of messy, maybe they want to keep theirs, you know, and they don't want to give it back. Can I figure out that it's me being responsible for me in this? And when I say being responsible, I mean figuring out that this is my love tank. Figuring out that these are my words, these are my emotions, these are my thoughts, these are mine. My choices, my consequences, my life, my agenda, my emotions, my thoughts, my actions. It's mine. And a lot of times we don't talk or think this way, especially as Americans. We have ways of saying what? You make me mad. Well, as long as I think you make me mad, I don't change me, I change who? You, because you make me mad. We talk this way, we think this way, and it kind of sounds like therapist talk, you know? And in a sense it is, you know, nobody makes you mad, it's just you, you know, you have choices. It is. But if I don't own it, I really am saying these other people in my life can control me. And these lines between us are really unclear. Who's responsible for what? When I make you responsible for my happiness, and I think that's one of the first questions on your book, who do you make responsible? I'm sorry, not your book, but your paper. Who do you make responsible for your happiness? And it might be a spouse, it might be a co-worker, it may be your job, it may be your mother or your father, maybe your kids, maybe everybody, maybe nobody. But who's responsible for it? And it should be me. Can I figure out that these are my thoughts? It's not just that you make me mad. It's my anger. It's my hurt. It's my woundedness. It's my joy. It's my hope. Can I own it? Because if I don't own it, I'm not defining me. I'm really defining you. Here's what you're supposed to do. Can I figure out it's mine? And even to the point of even my response or my reaction is my responsibility. Emerson Eggerichs is the one I hear say this a lot. He talks a lot about marriage and talking about love and respect. But that's his quote, you know, even my response is my responsibility. I might be treating you awful. I might be the biggest jerk around. But how you react to it is up to you, if you want it. And what you're looking for back from me, how am I reacting to it? Because, you know, I can keep saying, well, I'm only doing this because you're doing that. But it gets back into being very conditional. It gets back into cause and effect. I did this because you did that, or I won't do this because you won't do that. You know, we don't even say it. Sometimes we don't verbalize it. It just comes out. Can I figure out that even my response is my responsibility? And if I think that I should be responsible for me, I probably think other people should be responsible for who? Yeah. And so the second one goes along with it. And it's appropriate responsibility for others. It's long-winded. Because if I think I should be responsible for me, shouldn't other people be responsible for them? And I'm using this word very, very broadly, responsibility. It's not just like financial responsibility. It's meaning, can I let you feel and think and do what you're going to feel and think and do without me controlling it? Can I let you be responsible for you? Sometimes we have a hard time with this because we don't like people to disagree with us. We don't like them to think we're wrong. We don't like it when they don't like us. So we have to do something to change them so we can change us. Can I figure out that my responsibility is for me and I should have appropriate responsibility for other people? Who are we responsible for in life? Sorry? Our kids. Yeah, anybody else?
Sometimes our coworkers.
Possibly, yeah. If we've got a business, we may be responsible for the business, but we're not necessarily responsible for them as people, but as employees and what they do. Occasionally, you know, we're also responsible for who? Ourselves. We're responsible for ourselves, we're responsible for our children. We're responsible occasionally, and I don't mean like when your parents are older in their 50s, because I'm like old in my 50s, you know, but when your parents can't be responsible for themselves anymore. You know? And so we have to figure out how do we do that? You know, when dad kind of gets too old and he's not driving safe anymore, and you got to come and say, I've got to have the car keys, you know? And we start taking responsibility. We're responsible for our children because our children come into the world with how much responsibility? None. Zero. And it's not like, you know, the parents have it all and then all of a sudden they turn 18 and we say, okay, you're off on your own, go do well. No, it's supposed to be like 18 years of this, you know. I'm saying 18, it's kind of turned into 20 or 25. You know? But, and I say that kind of jokingly, but we kind of know that adolescence is this new thing that's happened only like in the past 100 years. It's not something that's been around for thousands of years. It used to be that you went from childhood into what? Adulthood. The 13 or 14-year-old went out and they actually, you know, they were already been helping out on the farm. Now they go off on their own journey. Now they become a man. Now they become a woman. Now they start doing things on their own. We kind of made adolescence this, you know, first we made it into high school, you know, 4 years, and we got to go off and do that. And then it was high school and then college, you know, and that's after you get out, you got to figure out who you are, you know, and we made it something it didn't necessarily have to be. And we've kind of drawn it out more and more. But part of it is how do we teach our kids to do this more? How do we come down on responsibility? Because the baby comes into the world with no responsibility. They think everything is about them, you know? The baby's in the womb for like 9 months. The mom's body adjusts to her. The baby comes out, but it's not like it changes, because as soon as the baby starts crying, we all come around, especially for the first child. You know, after about 2 or 3, it's just like, but the baby comes out, starts crying, and we're all gathered around. You know, and when the baby comes out, literally, the baby thinks what? Everything is about them. They really do. You know, they even think that the bed they're laying on is a part of them. They think when mom walks out of the room, she disappears because she has no purpose. She has no life. She's, you know, she's not. But when the baby starts crying, here she comes running. She's back in the picture. And that's why at about 3 or 4 months, you start seeing babies start doing this, you know, and they're figuring out, wow, I can. This is me. I control this. And around 3 or 4 months, they're starting to turn over, and they're figuring out, I'm separate from this thing I'm laying on, and this room around me. But there's still something emotionally that says, what? It's all about me. It's connected to me. You're here for me. You're here for my happiness. Aren't you here to make me happy? You know, and teaching our kids, how do we take on less responsibilities, they take on more. So this happens over years. But sometimes as parents, we don't come down because we think our kids won't come up. You know, and sometimes they don't because we don't come down. 12-year-old figures out really quickly, mom doesn't like it when I don't clean my room, and she gets all upset, but she cleans it. So why would he change? You know, he's not coming up more. And sometimes we don't come down because our kids honestly can't come. Sometimes there's mentally or physically or emotionally something there that's delayed in some sort of way. And so we don't come down. Sometimes they don't come up because we don't come down. Sometimes we don't come down because we think they won't come up. But we want our kids to keep doing this so that when they hit 17, 18, hopefully 19, somewhere in there, you can tell I'm not planning long term. You know, my 25-year-old is not going to be living in my basement, you know. Yeah. And we want this to happen so that they are learning how to do this again. Because as parents, what we are given as leaders is not just to raise kids who are good or look good, but to raise kids who are godly. And we teach them how to do this so that they're learning more and more, how do I fill up my own tank? So they don't go into relationships in a very dysfunctional, you know, very dependent way. Everybody has to feed into me. We want this shit to happen. And happen in an appropriate way. And that's why I'm saying appropriate responsibility. Because I think there are a lot of times where we don't do it appropriately. We take a lot of responsibility for people who are not our responsibility. And I'm not saying, like, let's go out and hurt everybody's feelings, you know, let's just be mean. No, I think we should be considerate and kind. But that's where this appropriateness comes in. Because if I don't do something or say something, because you might get mad, it starts to change the relationship. If I don't do something because you might get hurt, or you might leave, or you might do something, and I don't do it, I'm not defining who I am. I'm not even defining the other people in my life, and these lines are really unclear. Who's responsible for what? And it becomes unclear. The other part of it is sometimes we take too much responsibility. We say, I can't be okay unless you do this. I can't be okay unless you stop doing it. Which means this line between us, again, is really unclear. And we have words for that too, manipulative or controlling or overbearing or, and we've got different people in different reasons. It's not us in this room, it's those other people we've talked about, but it's not real clear. How do we not be controlled? Can I let you do and say and be who you're going to do and say and be? Can I take appropriate responsibility? Now the third one goes along with it, it's this. And this is a really odd way to say it. But it's being able to delay immediate gratification. Meaning, can I put off always feeling good right here, right now? And this is definitely one of those things we want to teach our kids, isn't it? You got to eat your beans before you can have dessert. You got to do this before you do that. And we're teaching our kids how to always put off feeling good. And the way it applies in boundaries is if I can't do that, if I can't learn how to say no to others, it's not me defining my boundaries, it's everybody else in my life. If I've got 6 people asking me to help them move on Saturday morning, and I say yes to everybody because I want you to think I'm a good person, I want you to think I'm a good Christian, I want you, you help me, so I'm going to help you, and I can't say no to anybody. It's not me defining my boundary, it's everybody else. Can I learn how to say no? And we don't do that a lot because why? Well, we avoid conflict, it doesn't feel good. You might get mad at me, what if she leaves? What if she doesn't like me? What if she stops loving me? What if it, And we don't do it because it feels too uncomfortable. Can we learn how to say no? Can we learn how to say no because it's going to, especially with sin, because it's going to interfere in these relationships? Can we learn how to say no when we need to say no? And that doesn't mean say no to everything. You know some of those parents that no matter what's asked, hey, can I go? No. I'm just going to go to the bathroom. No. Can I go do that? No. And it's almost like, can we learn to listen? And I don't mean like say yes to everything, but can we say no to the things we need to say no to? Can we figure out what these are in my life? Because one of the things that happen is, if we don't like the way it works here, sometimes what we do is we move out and we get out of the relationship because it doesn't feel good. And so we move out of the bedroom, or we move out of the house, or we change last name, or we move 5 states away, and it's too rough living in here, and so we do this. But even then, we know it's not just geographical, because they're calling up saying, why didn't you do this? And because it's not just physical, it's emotional and it's relational. Why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Or where's the money? Or you didn't. And they're still got these ties on you if they've got them. Doesn't happen as often if you don't see them every day. Or the other thing we do is if we stay in the relationship, we build up this wall so thick and heavy that says, I'm never going to let you control me or hurt me or affect me anymore. And in doing that, it's not a boundary that defines me. It's a wall that keeps people out, keeps us in. And we miss out on what it means to be a part of this family, this group. How do I figure out how to be here and work through it? And in doing that, it's not always going to feel good. Sometimes we have to talk about the stuff that doesn't feel good. And the term I use for this is being comfortable. With being uncomfortable. Because it doesn't feel good. So most of the time we just avoid it. And then it keeps happening, it keeps happening. What do we? Well, we put up that wall thicker and thicker. Because we don't want to be hurt. And we're kind of concerned, well, if you're not going to fill this up, who is? And I have to guard it. I can't share it because I only got a little bit left. And you know what I'm talking about. You've had times, where you're driving around, somebody needs a ride. Man, your tank is on full. You don't care, man. You'll drive them off to, Halo or something. But there's other times when you're driving around and in your car, you're riding on fumes, and somebody needs a ride someplace, and I'd love to help you out, but I got to watch mine. And it's too uncomfortable. And once we get into that pattern because it doesn't feel good and we're more about feeling good or avoiding feeling bad, we have to learn how do I be comfortable with being uncomfortable? How can I say those things are hard to say? Because you might get mad. It might hurt your feelings. You might not like me. And what happens when we do this is we usually keep the relationship very shallow and thin and safe. We don't talk about this and we don't talk about that, because if we do, you know, and so we avoid all these different minefields that are just there emotionally. And yet when we figure out that we can be comfortable with being uncomfortable, we can learn how to say no to some things. It's not always about feeling good right here, right now in this moment. That it may be uncomfortable, you might get hurt, I might get angry, I might be hurt, you might be angry. That we can talk about it, and when we figure out we can talk about it and still be in this relationship, we can talk through what's going on, and we don't lose it, we go from very shallow and thin to very deep. Because now we can talk about anything. We might not like it, it might be uncomfortable. But can I learn how to do this in my life? Can I learn how to say no to some things? Can I learn how to say no to me? Always feeling it. Andy Stanley is the pastor at North Point Church in Atlanta. And one of the things I heard him say was, our systems work perfectly. And what he means is the things that we do get us the results that we want them to get. Meaning if every time I don't like something, I pull away and I act emotionally distant and she comes running, well, that's probably what I want to see happen. Or if I get angry and I rage and I, go all crazy and she goes running, or she, cowers up, or she gives in, well, that's probably what we want. Our systems work perfectly. And we have ways of saying, well, it's not really what I want. It's not really, but it is. But it gets me, because it feels too uncomfortable not getting what we want. But our systems work. Number 4, to me, is the one that really brings this all together. And it's this. It's giving out a choice. Rather than getting out of fear or guilt or obligation. It's given because we choose to, not because we have to or we're afraid not to. And when I mean giving in every way. Can I give? Can I pour out? Can I figure out that sometimes there are people in my life that I just need to pour into? That there are people in my life who I've got to, I need to. Not because I have to, but because I choose to. Number 1 is not about how selfish can I be and only think about me. It's just me being responsible for me. Can I be appropriately responsible for the other people in my life? And when I start to do that, I actually have more to give, don't I? Because now I'm saying, it's not being pulled in 15 different directions. It's being pulled in the way God's wanting me to be pulled, which isn't always comfortable. A lot of times it's not. It's taking me out of my comfort zone. When we do or give out of these 3 things, not the first time or the second time, but when we keep giving out of fear or obligation, it always leads to resentment, because it means you have power over me. And I'm giving in just so you don't get mad. I'm giving in so you don't get hurt. I'm giving in just because I always have to. I'm giving in because, and that's not how we resent it. I don't mind the first time neighbor comes over and wants to borrow my lawnmower. But when he keeps coming over, now he doesn't bring it back, and now it's sitting over there, and now it's in the rain. And I don't go say something to him because, well, what if he thinks I'm a bad neighbor? What if he thinks I'm a bad Christian? What if he thinks I'm just kind of petty? So I, have to be the good, nice Christian and not do anything or say anything because of this fear. Obligation, even, there's a difference between doing things because we have to versus something I don't want to do, but I choose to do. I may not want to do it, but I know it's the right thing, and so I choose it. And even with guilt, when I'm saying guilt here, I don't mean like guilt, because I think we're supposed to feel guilty when we do something. When I lie, I should probably feel bad. The Holy Spirit's going to convict me. But me making you feel guilty and making you do something when you don't want to because I'm saying you're wrong is a lot different. It's too much leverage. It's this power over us that we don't like. That's what I'm saying leads to resentment, especially when it's fear. Fear of not being loved, fear of not being connected, fear of being hurt, fear of someone being angry at you, fear of people not accepting you, fear of being left. This is one that drives most of us. What if I get hurt? There's something about choice in relationships that changes it, and I think especially in love relationships, choice has to be there. We hear this with God. God creates everything, just like we've been reading about. Genesis chapter 1. In the beginning, God. God creates everything. He makes man, chapter 2. Forms him, breathes life into him, has a relationship with him. Chapter 3, sin comes into the world. And he steps in. And we know that Jesus is a part of this plan, even though it happens thousands of years later. This redemption, reconciliation that comes through the blood of Jesus wasn't plan B. It's a part of it all the way along. He creates us and we sin, and then he gives it back to us and says, I still want a relationship with you, but you choose. You decide. You pick. There has to be choice in love. If there's no choice, I just feel trapped. We resent that. If the only reason my wife stays with me is because she can't do any better, or she's afraid she can't make it on her own, that's fear driving it. I don't feel loved then, I just feel what? Used. If the only reason I stay with her is because I can't do any better, and I can't do any better, to be honest with you, and I can't do any better, then she doesn't feel loved just because I'm staying there because I have to, and I'll drag it out. Do what? Step up closer to the microphone a second. Oh, yeah, check. Check. In the positive way. Yeah. Have no clue where I'm at. Anyway, here's where we're going to go with this. The typical stereotype of this, and this is the extreme measure, but it's the typical stereotype, is the alcoholic, rageaholic husband who has all of this room to do whatever he wants. And the wife who feels pushed back into this corner. And she's more worried about him and what he feels and what he's going to do. And she's carrying all the weight that's not really hers. Because what if he gets mad? What if he leaves? What if he drinks again? What if he leaves for a couple of days? What if he raises? What if he... And she's pushed back here in this corner. And she's more concerned with him and what he feels. And he's not concerned with her. And this isn't just about men or women or husband or wives. It doesn't matter who's. But this is the typical stereotype. And she stays here because why? Well, it feels really uncomfortable, and if I step out, I don't know what's going to happen. There's too much fear, and it sure keeps me here. It's been going on for years. And in some distorted way, it almost feels like love, but not really. Because at least he's here. Him being here is better than nothing. But it's this fear that keeps her trapped here in this corner. And as long as she keeps waiting for him to set this boundary and for him to start pouring into her, she's going to be waiting a long time because why would he change it? It's working in his favor. He has all this room to play. He can come and go whenever he wants. And it's not even her responsibility to fix him. It's his. It's his job. She can keep filling it up, but he's going to keep draining out any way he wants to. And the answer is get out. The answer is, how do I push this line back to the middle? How do I say that this is the line? I'm not going to be in the corner anymore. I love you and I love this marriage and I want it to work out, but I'm not going to tell my family I bumped into the door, I didn't bump into the door, you pushed me, you hit me. I'm not going to tell your boss you're sick again, you're not sick, you're just, I'm not going to tell our friends you're just not feeling good, you're just off doing everything you're going to do. I'm not going to do something. And this is not her putting boundaries on him, this is defining her in the relationship. I'm not going to be in this relationship anymore. Boundaries are easy to see when they're physical, because when you see that house and it's got fences on the front and there's a road, fences on the side, there's a road in front, and there's woods in the back, you kind of know that's the property. But when it's relational and emotional, that's hard to see. Because people cross our boundaries all the time. We don't like the way it feels. And if we don't care about them, we're real quick to say, hey, back off. If we do care, or we care what they think about us, we're honest with them. Because, well, what if I lose? What if I get hurt? What if I lose the relationship? And so it's easy to see those physical boundaries. And even when you see like two houses, and there may not even be like a fence in the middle, but this guy cuts his grass twice a week, and the other guy cuts it like once a summer, and that's a picture of a magazine, and there's no fence, so you don't know, but you know when you walk up, they live differently. Because over here, there's all this junk and 4 cars from 1972 sitting in the front yard, and And, it just, you tell, it just looks different. Over here, everything is nice and perfect and even and looks, picture perfect. And you see how they live differently. And so seeing it is hard because it's emotional and it's relational. It's easier when it's physical. We know those people when they step up to you and they're talking too close and just kind of back up because it's like right here in your face. And we know that physical space. But how do we draw some of these lines? How do we figure out this is where the boundary is? Because if she pushes the line here, she says, I'm just not going to do it anymore. I'm not. This is not about her defining his boundaries. It's her saying, I'm not doing this. I'm not going to tell your parents this. I'm not, my parents. I'm not going to tell your boss. I'm not going to. And if she were to do this, what is he going to do? Do what?
Good question.
Yeah.
Don't really know how it's going to react.
We don't. And more than likely, he's going to what? Push her down. Oh, if you tell your family this, they won't like me, or they'll be mad. Or if you tell my boss, I'll lose my job. And then what do we do? If you tell her, then they'll know. Then he's going to use fear and guilt to say, get back into the corner. And yet she's got to say, here's the one. How do we talk about it? How do we make it different? I don't want to lose this marriage, but I can't keep going the way it's going. Can we talk about it in a way, hopefully, that we're both safe? And like I'm saying, this is the extreme example. But in our everyday lives, it comes up because we don't say things. I'm not saying, let's go pick every battle we can. Just, stand your ground and, dig in those boundaries and, and claim your territory. Not like that. But especially in marriage, how do we